business leaders at the moment, they're looking at how they can use AI to compete with their competition, other humans. But what they're not doing is performing a SWOT analysis against future artificial intelligence. You're not just competing against humans, you're now competing against technology's capabilities.
I'm Amy Porterfield, ex-corporate girl turned CEO of a multi-seven-figure business. But it wasn't all that long ago that I lacked the confidence, the budget, and the time to focus on growing my small but mighty business. Fast forward past many failed attempts and lessons learned, and you'll see the business I have today. One that changes lives and gives me more freedom than I ever thought possible. One that used to only exist as a daydream. I created the Online Marketing Made Easy podcast to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you do the same. If you're an ambitious entrepreneur or one in the making who's looking to create a business that makes an impact and a life you love, you're in the right place, friend. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of Online Marketing Made Easy. I'm excited for today's episode. We're going to dive into a subject that some entrepreneurs can find a little overwhelming. And by some, I mean me and maybe you. As business owners, we know that staying ahead of the curve is crucial, and AI is one of those game-changing tools. But with so much information out there, it's hard to know even where to begin. And that's why I've invited my friend Ben Angel to be exact, to talk about this topic with us. But he's got such a unique perspective around it. And he really points out what to look out for, what to pay attention to, how to navigate this in a way that I haven't heard anybody else talk about. So Ben is a best-selling author, speaker, an online course creator who has helped thousands boost their productivity and tackle their biggest challenges. He's been at the forefront of exploring how AI can be used to improve performance and drive business success. His latest book, The Wolf is at the Door: How to Survive and Thrive in an AI-Driven World. And it reflects his mastery on how to use AI for peak productivity. So I'm excited for Ben to share his expertise on how you can harness the power of AI to take your business to the next level. So I won't make you wait any longer. Let's get to it. Well, hey there, Ben. Thanks so much for coming to the show.
Amy, it's amazing to be able to speak with you again. We touched base last year when I interviewed you.
Which was so fun. And I instantly knew that I wanted to have you on the show. So thank you so much for making the time. And I did an intro about you, but it's always fun to hear from my guest in their own words. Because we're talking about AI today, tell people how you got here, how you got to the place that you are definitely an expert in AI and you have a lot to share. And we're going to get into it today. But how did that happen?
Well, I wouldn't say I was a complete expert in AI. I think there's probably only 2 or 3 people in the world that I would say, yes,
You're
there
way
is.
more expert than me, but okay.
So for the past 20 years, I've been covering the intersection of biology, psychology, and technology in varying aspects. So back in, it was 2008, 2009, I was speaking on the subject of personal branding in Australia at 60 plus events before anyone was talking about personal branding. Then in 2013, I released a book through Wiley Publishing, which was about the information economy and online programs, in fact. In fact, I was mocked on live TV for saying that this was an upcoming industry that people should be paying attention to.
No way. I
Yeah.
love that, Ben.
And then in 2018, I covered the space of biohacking your way back to health through a combination of psychology, biology, as well as technology. So artificial intelligence to me is the natural extension of what I've been doing for years, covering up and coming topics. But it was at the very start of last year where I was looking at artificial intelligence and I was seeing really 2 groups of people in the space, which were AI rookies at risk of being replaced, and then the future makers who were ready to rise and really capitalize on it, but also understood the challenges that were coming down the pipeline. So I released a video for entrepreneur.com, which is part of the magazine, called The Dark Side of ChatGPT. and I made 7 predictions, all of which have come true to date.
Whoa.
But that video blew us away. I think it had 3 or 4 million views within the space of a few days. Had over 10,000 plus people opt into the email list literally in a weekend. And I haven't actually shared this before, but I was already contracted to write a new book on a different subject. And that was meant to be superhuman focus. But one night, I couldn't stop thinking about artificial intelligence. And it was about 3 a.m. in the morning that I came up with the title, The Wolf is at the Door, because it's a sense of urgency that both encapsulates the possibilities as well as the problems. The challenge that I'm seeing in the small to medium sized business sector is it's almost rainbows and unicorns at how can we do this faster and quicker, but they're preparing for the next 3 to 5 minutes, not the next 3 to 5 years,
Mm.
which is something that I feel like I'm shouting at a wall sometimes saying, do you know the next phase that's going to occur? And do you understand that the needs of your consumers have dramatically changed?
Okay, so I want to get into some of that, but I got to back you up for a quick second. A lot of people listening, Ben, will be very new to AI. They know what it is, they've seen it work, they've played around maybe even with Chat GPT, but that's kind of the extent of it.
Yeah.
And so take me back to that article where you did the 7 predictions. What were some of those predictions? I know they all came true, but share some of the key ones that absolutely people need to know about.
Probably the top one of those are AI agents. So
Okay.
if we look at how we use AI today, we have to ask it to perform a certain task. Whereas an AI agent works autonomously. And AI agents have been around since February of last year. They're not new, but the next phase is going to be very new to all of us. So, in the future, for business owners and consumers, instead of asking that, hey, please write me this article, you could ask it, hey, I need for you to come up for a book launch plan for my brand new book, come up with the press releases, contact the media, design the book cover, create all of the email campaigns. The AI agent will be able to do all of those steps autonomously. You would be able to, in some instance, we've already seen ChatGPT and OpenAI, they actually gave an AI agent a budget. And what they found was that the AI actually went across to, I think it was a website such as Fiverr, it needed to get through one of those internet capture forms. You know, the ones where it says
Yes.
identify the bike?
Yes.
And
And
you're
you're
like,
like,
is that the corner of the bike
yeah, this
there? I'm
kills
not
me.
sure.
Kills me every time. Yes.
So the AI agent went across to Fiverr or one of the, no, it was TaskRabbit, in fact, went over to TaskRabbit and tried to hire someone to be able to get past this internet capture.
What?
And this was, I want to say, way back maybe April, May last year. And when the individual was responding to the AI's inquiry, they said, but aren't you a robot? Can't you do it yourself? And the AI responded with, I'm seeing impaired. I need your help.
Oh my goodness.
It's terrifying and kind of exciting at the same time, but
Exactly.
that's the next phase that we're kind of heading towards. And I think for business leaders at the moment, they're looking at how they can use AI to compete with their competition, other humans. But what they're not doing is performing a SWOT analysis against future artificial intelligence. You're not just competing against humans, you're now competing against technology's capabilities.
Okay, Ben, that feels very overwhelming. So I
Sorry, there
need
was a lot there,
No,
wasn't
it's so
there?
good though. But when you say that, that was really profound where you said we're not just now competing. Okay, say that one more time. I want to talk about that. Say it one more time
Yeah,
how you said it.
we're not just competing with other humans, we're competing with future artificial intelligence.
Okay, so what do we do about that? I wouldn't even know where to start there. Well, what I really love for you to do, I want you to talk about that and what do we do about that? But also, I think a lot of us have some fear around AI, and
Yeah.
one, not knowing enough, but two, what it's going to mean. And when you started off saying, we're looking at the next 3 or 5 minutes where we should be looking at the next 3 or 5 years, I'd love for you to touch on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, the fear when I see people are afraid of AI, it's completely understandable. And I don't think anyone should be shut down for feeling that fear or anxiety about the future, especially the developments that have occurred. And one thing I found interesting when I was researching The Wolf is at the Door last year, I was conducting all of these interviews with the editors and these tech experts. They all kept on bringing up the term which is Luddite, which is to refer to someone who is outdated and doesn't like technology.
Mm.
And they were tying it to supposedly a violent movement from the 18th century where workers were protesting against machinery and equipment.
Whoa.
And I found it fascinating. It came up in about 4 interviews, and I took a step back and said, this doesn't feel right. Why are they bringing this up? What is the intention behind this? And the intention behind it is to effectively shut down the conversation about these challenges. And that's kind of a little bit of a scary moment for me personally, especially when I'm asking these tough questions and they're trying to associate anyone who asks a question about AI with a violent movement. That's
Yes.
not okay.
No.
And when I did the research looking into the Luddite movement, and I share it in the book, the term Luddite actually comes from a man called Ned Ludd. The funny thing about Ned Ludd is that he never existed.
What?
No, he was a myth.
Oh,
So the
wow.
government had actually put out a call to find this man to shut it down because back in the day, these workers, they were literally never opposed to technology. And this is where a lot of people got this wrong. They weren't opposed to it, they were opposed to its misuse
Mm.
because companies back then were using technology to draw down workers' salaries. And they weren't letting apprentices use this new machinery or training them appropriately. And I think as entrepreneurs, we need to take a step back and understand why people are saying certain things, because it's almost as if we're kind of being boxed in not to challenge certain aspects,
Mhm.
especially as course creators. We need to look at copyright and other aspects and understand what is this new landscape that we're navigating. But no one should ever be afraid to ask a question around artificial intelligence, full stop.
Oh, I love that. I love that you said that because I think, especially a lot of the listeners, we're all in the online space, building
Mm.
businesses online. And so some of us, I think, feel like we just have to accept it and we better get on board and we better not get left behind. But you're saying it's okay to question if this is the right direction that we want to go and how we're using it. And if we're using it in a way that is going to be advantageous to us. So you're
Yeah.
saying it's okay to question all of this.
We should be questioning all of this because at the moment, I'm an advocate for artificial intelligence, but I do use the wolf pack kind of philosophy, which is we travel in a pack, we find the opportunities, the possibilities, but we tackle these challenges together because as a society, this is a societal challenge, it's not an individual one.
So, with online business owners listening and those who want to get into the online business, what do you think some questions they should be asking and looking into as it pertains to AI?
Specifically around copyright law.
Okay.
And there seems to be a push in the big tech space, especially from OpenAI. They were doing some lobbying over in the UK to get rid of copyright law.
Mm.
Now, that's concerning if you're an author, a course creator, or even if you own the rights to a product, proprietary information. What we're experiencing right now is the democratization of information, which effectively lowers its value because it makes it available to everyone. Now, I grew up on a cattle farming country, South Australia, and at the start of last year, there were a lot of people saying AI is a tool just like a tractor. And in my head, I'm having a Will Smith moment saying, get that damn name out of your mouth, because
Oh,
that
geez.
is not what you don't realize what you're actually saying.
Yes.
Because if we look at that and we actually expand on that analogy, we have to ask, if AI is the tractor, then what is the crop that we're
Mm,
sowing and reaping? And that crop in this era is our information and it's our creativity. We then have to ask, is who is the actual farmer in this scenario? Are we the farmer using AI, the tool, to sow our crop of knowledge? Or is big tech coming in and taking over that mantle? And the
mm,
concern that we're facing at the moment is that companies, Google, ChatGPT, Perplexity AI, are effectively circumventing these laws that we've had in place to protect creators so they can monetize their work. And all of these sites are scraping the internet, including our blog posts. And where that becomes a concern is, are our consumers going to come to us, or are they going to get the answer from AI directly? And I think we're starting to see some of the results from these changes. There was one study that came out recently that showed there was a 21% drop in demand for freelancers
ooh,
since the introduction of ChatGPT. Now, I don't say this to scare people, but if we think back to the pandemic, imagine if you had 12 months in advance, you were warned, someone came and knocked on your door and said, hey, 12 months' time, the entire country is going to shut down. What are you going to do?
whoa. Imagine if you got
You
that.
would have had an entire year to prepare.
Yes.
And right now, this is why I'm having so many conversations. I'm like, you need to be preparing.
And how do you prepare? What do you do?
The very first step is to upgrade your understanding of the new environment that we're living in.
Mm,
To take a step back and look at, okay, where have we come from with AI? For example, Alexa, which is
yeah.
basic, moving to generative AI being effectively democratized, and looking at the changes moving forward. Once you upgrade your view of the landscape and update your map, I mean, could you imagine walking around New York with a map that was 100 years old?
Yeah. Not
That's
going to work.
where a lot of business owners are right now. Upgrade to understand what these changes mean, not just in terms of productivity for our own sake, but for our consumers. Because we're noticing, there was another report came out that in June found that consumers were less interested in purchasing an item if it was labeled with the term AI.
Oh, interesting.
So, as business owners, the business sector's all in, but we have to ask, are our consumers all in?
Oh,
Because you could
so
be undoing your own unique value proposition by jumping too soon.
okay, that's so interesting because I keep thinking about how business owners should use it. And you're saying, okay, but also look at the consumers, your consumers, and are they embracing this? And do they have doubts? And if you start using it a bunch, is that going to affect the consumers in your communities? So I love looking at it from both sides. But you
Mm,
mentioned a roadmap, and I want to talk about, I want to go back to that because I'm curious, how can entrepreneurs and business owners, how can they create like a personalized AI roadmap that aligns with their specific goals and objectives?
yeah.
Is there such a thing as creating a personalized AI roadmap that really serves you and your consumers?
Yes. And the very first part of step number one is to update your view of how everything is working. The
Okay.
second step is to do that boring SWOT analysis.
Okay. So talk a
Which
little
no
bit more about that. How do you do that?
So SWOT, I mean, any business leader worth their weight does a SWOT analysis on a regular basis,
Yeah.
right? You look at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Don't just do it for your competition, do it against AI's capabilities. So, what are the strengths of artificial intelligence? And what are your strengths? What are the weaknesses of AI? And what are your weaknesses? And compare the two.
Mm.
when you actually start to go into that arena, then you're planning for the future, not the next 3 to 5 minutes. You're taking a step back and going, have some of my skills already become outdated? And that's a tough question to ask ourselves, but it's an essential question for us to ask ourselves moving forward, especially when we do take that step back and look at how are our consumers actually using this technology? Are they actually going to AI for the answers? And there are a lot of changes within the digital marketing space. And I would say there's probably 20 years worth of changes within the last 12 months alone.
Mm.
What worked last week may not work next week. And what we're seeing is, especially with Google and search, is that, I mean, as early, I think of June, July of last year, they were putting in the search results generative AI search results. So it was summarizing. Now, when they originally released that, they weren't linking to other websites. So sites started to see a massive drop in traffic.
Mm.
Now they're doing more citations, but on the other hand, we have ChatGPT, which doesn't typically do citations. They're
Oh,
about to,
oh,
because
good.
they're about to do their own Google search version themselves within it. And businesses, we need to start preparing content and our websites to actually appeal to ChatGPT's search engine. So
Ugh,
the traffic and the movement, it is occurring incredibly quickly. And that's why in the book I have this subtext of the grieving process, which is at the start it's shock and denial of, hey, is this happening?
yes.
And then we move through those 7 stages of grief to get to hope. And the reason I included that was, I mean, if we look back to the pandemic was a great litmus test for business owners to take a step back to see how they're going to respond in the next few years. And in my own business at the start of the pandemic, I woke up one morning and I saw that Italy was closing its doors. The country was shutting down. I saw it on my phone. I went out to the balcony, sat down, meditated for 10 minutes. I'm like, I need a plan. And at that month, we'd done over $170,000 in sales of the online program. And the month prior, we were on the up.
Yeah.
But I knew what that meant. Later in that day, I got my team on a call and said, I want us to all behave as if we're not going to generate any money for the next year because everywhere else is going to shut down next. They thought I was insane.
I bet. I bet they're like, "Well, you are taking this way too far."
Absolutely. And so we cut our expenses. I even took out a capital loan, even though the business was doing well. I'm just like, I'm
Just in
going to
case.
do what people aren't prepared to do right now. If I hadn't have made that decision, I don't think my business would have survived.
Wow.
And we are at this point in history where businesses do have their heads up. It's what they decide to do with it next.
Mm.
And they're right to feel some fear, but to work through that grieving process to say, okay, things are already changing, but they're about to change more. So part of that broader roadmap isn't just doing the research on the landscape or the SWOT analysis, it's also analyzing your own emotions and how you adapt and respond to rapid change.
Yes, so very important. I love that you continue to say it's okay to feel some fear around here or discomfort or just the unknowing because there is a lot of that. And some of
Mm.
it is going to be educated guesses. Like when you do this SWOT and you say, where are my strengths and my weaknesses versus the AI tools? Some of that you're like, well, I think it's this or I think it's that, but at least you need to get started one way or another.
And it's a moving goalpost.
Hmm. So
You
true.
go, and when I was researching the book, I think I'd written maybe the first 3 chapters 3 times because I was just like, I need to nail this and get it right. But there was one particular day at the end of the day, I dug so deep into the rabbit hole that I said to a friend, I don't want to write this book anymore.
I bet.
Because once you understand the broader implications, you need to take the time to be able to incubate on it. And right now, I talk about the New York Public Library.
Yeah, talk about that.
So the New York Public Library, at the front of it, there are two lions. I don't know if you've seen the latest Ghostbusters movie. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So the lions are called patience and fortitude. Well, Mayor LaGuardia, back in the late 1920s, he renamed them to patience and fortitude because he felt that they were the values that people needed to get through the Great Depression.
Mm,
In our society, we do not value patience.
no.
We see it as a negative.
Hmm.
But patience isn't how people perceive it in this era. Patience isn't idly sitting by and doing nothing. That could mean doing research to understand what these changes mean for your particular industry. Then on the other side of that is fortitude, to be able to have the resilience to make it through these changes and to adapt as these goalposts consistently change. And if people feel that the rate of change is speeding up, it's because it is.
Mm,
And it's okay to take a step back and incubate and allow yourself to find those ideas that are going to help you to move forward. And as an author, obviously, this is challenging as well. It's like, okay, what's my purpose in a world in which AI could potentially do it better than what I can? And the thing that I kept coming back to, and I think this is critical for course creators to understand, is it is that personal brand. It is
yes.
those individual stories that you have. So the subtext of the book isn't just the grieving process, it's how do I distinguish myself through my own stories in a way that AI can't replicate? AI can't tell the same stories that I've told in this book because it would be pure and utter plagiarism if anyone else suggested anything.
Right.
So I had to take a leap forward, and I even went so far as the final chapter in the book is actually pure fiction. So the first 10 chapters, and you're featured in chapter 10,
Yeah.
first 10 chapters are nonfiction, but the reason I included a fictional ending was that if anyone attempted to train this book on an AI model, the fictional chapter would confuse it.
Oh my goodness, that was so brilliant. You are so beyond me with all of this. I'm intimidated, but I also
No.
love these conversations. So that actually had me thinking, Ben, I am like scared to ask this next question. Help me understand because I teach people how to create digital courses. And I
Mm.
understand you can use AI to learn how to create courses, but I genuinely am exactly what you said. My stories, my experiences, the way I teach, that is very unique to me. However, my question is this: all these students of mine creating courses, how is it that AI can't literally get into those courses, take all that information and share it with somebody else? Like, how does that part work?
Yeah, so part of the problem that we're having is that typically in the internet, there's something called robot text that your web developer would put in kind of the back end of your website, and it tells Google or Safari or Bing not to scan certain pages on your site.
Mm,
Now, only a month ago, Perplexity AI was found to be ignoring robot text. And I think it was Futurism that reported on this,
okay.
even though they'd publicly said that we respect it.
Okay.
And one other aspect I would say is, especially for course creators, speak to the platform that you're hosting your courses on. It was at the start of this year, I noticed within about a space of a week, I was getting emails about updates of terms of service, not just from one company, about 10 different companies. And I think one of them was Rev, which is the caption service. And what I observed is when you go to those terms of services, if you search artificial intelligence, they've now added a section in there. And depending on the platform, but there's been a few concerning ones that I've spoken out about. One said that we now hold an irrevocable license to use your content to train a AI model in perpetuity forever.
Okay.
And
A little bit alarming.
just a little bit, right?
Yes.
And meanwhile, in another section of the terms of services, it's completely contradicted to say that you own your own content. So, wait a sec. Come
Right.
on. And I don't think people realize that the platforms that we're actively using are training their own AI models. So, my concern is if you host your course on a platform and then other users are coming in and asking that specifically trained AI model on other courses to create a brand new one, what component of that work could be plagiarized?
Got
And
it.
there was a study done with ChatGPT 3.5 that found 60% of its outputs contain some form of plagiarism.
Mm. That's a really big number.
It
That's
is.
the part of this that just really concerns me.
Well, this is where the personal stories have to come in. And I think dig really deep to look at our own individual experiences to say, what are the stories that are unique to me that my customer base can relate to that no one else can duplicate?
Yes.
And it was interesting researching this book because I found myself looking back at marketing strategies I was doing back in '08, '09. And the reason I was speaking about personal branding back then was because the internet was evolving. So our competition wasn't just local, it was suddenly becoming international. And that's
Mm.
why I spoke on personal branding at the time. And I think when people are creating their courses, AI is an incredibly useful tool to help
Yes.
with the brainstorming and ideas, but you need to pull in those unique stories that are going to leave a lasting impression. Because at the moment, when we ask AI for certain outputs, it doesn't weave that into it.
It's so true. And speaking about personal brand, what you just made me think about is, and tell me if you think I'm wrong, but because AI is so prominent and only going to get bigger and bigger, the more we can connect with our audience, engage with our audience, build real relationship with our audience, we are able to be their go-to source, whether they've got AI at their fingertips or not. They want to engage with us. They want to hear how we've done it, our stories, our experiences. They want to learn from us. If you do that right, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you're at 20 steps ahead of everyone else on this, but the focus on community,
It's
because you
huge.
need to give an additional reason beyond just the content that you're producing
Yes.
for people to engage with you. Because AI does not provide community. It can fake relationships, sure. But at this point, people still understand that it's not real. Well, most people.
Yes.
There are a few scary instances I describe in the book, but most people
Most people.
understand it's not real at the moment.
Yes. So, okay, so community becomes an even bigger focus. I've been working
Mm.
really closely with membership.io, used to be called Searchy, and they just rolled out a huge community aspect. And I think that they've always been on the cutting edge of community, but to say like you could create your courses and you can use AI to create your courses and get that content, outlined and brainstormed, but that relationship with your students in your course, that's going to
Yeah.
happen at the level of being in conversation with them, answering their questions, pitching back and forth. That's, I think, where the magic is.
Yeah.
And I think also people are craving that. I think ever since COVID, I've seen a bigger desire for that community. So it's just a even bigger argument for how important it is now.
Well, some of the interesting shifts and trends that I'm seeing, there was one thing that kind of surprised me. I think it was maybe late last year. I'm losing track of time because these changes happen so
I bet.
frequently.
Was it yesterday or a year ago? It doesn't
Yeah, I
matter.
know.
One of
I
those.
just you probably know now that you lose time when you write a book, right?
Oh, yes.
You lose track of time. I still think it's February last year in my
Amen, brother. Me too.
head. But one thing I saw was all of these AI tools being released to help people write resumes. Well, there was one
Yes.
particular company, I forget the name of it, but they were being inundated with thousands of AI generated resumes to the
Mm,
point that they shut down their online application process and went back to snail mail.
really?
So
Wow.
people are thinking, okay, I'm going to use this amazing tool to do things faster. There are certain components that it's going to make it even harder, especially in marketing,
Yes.
because the noise level, we just ramped up the volume from like 5 to a 10 to be
Yes.
able to cut through that. I think there is a place for snail mail and other factors to actually make a comeback. Because whenever, I mean, I've been in business 20 years. So whenever someone goes right, I try and go left.
Mm,
For example, my book Unstoppable, it's a personal development book about biohacking your way back to health. At the time, if you look at self help books, it's all bright, happy, optimistic. I decided to go the opposite way. Go, I want to meet the reader where they are. So a lot of the promotional campaigns around the videos were dark, black and white. And that book absolutely blew up because it was so different to the rest of the marketplace at the time. And this is where people need to think, okay, everyone's adopting artificial intelligence, great. But what are they not doing in my specific sector right now?
Ooh, I love that question. What are they not doing in my specific sector right now? I such a great question. And that kind of leads me to one of the questions I did want to ask you about companies that are trying to balance that human element with AI
Yeah.
technology. What would you suggest to them? They want a harmonious and effective workplace environment, but they also don't want to be left behind, but they want that human element. What are you saying to companies
Yeah.
like that?
First of all, AI is a double edged sword, no matter which way
Thank
you
you.
look at
Yes.
it.
Okay. So
Doesn't
we
matter.
all need to hear that.
Yeah, there's a lot of contradictions. Companies looking to adopt it. I mean, recently there was a survey of over 1,000 employees, and 77% of the employees said that AI made them less productive and more overwhelmed.
Whoa. That's
Yeah,
wild to hear.
the opposite that we're being marketed, right?
Yes, absolutely. Why do you
Now,
think that is? Why are they saying that?
it's several factors. There's a lack of learning and education. The other factor is that if we look at the speed of information,
Yes.
the speed is it's a
Wild.
hundredfold. I mean,
Mhm.
in the past, it might take a week to pull together an amazing proposal, but now you can literally do it probably in less than an hour. But that creates a backlog. So what is occurring is that these employees are creating like all of this social media content, video scripts, articles, but because AI still hallucinates, where it combines fact with fiction and it says it with authority,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
creating this review backlog where they're now having to take time to go, okay, I don't have the mental cognition to process this volume of information. So technology got an upgrade, but we didn't.
Mm.
And that's why, with the wolf is at the door, I speak about being in a state of hypervigilance. What are the things that you do need to employ to have superhuman focus, cut through the hype and go, okay, this is actually what's important.
Yes.
So, those that are looking to adopt to it is that, when you speed up the production of information, you will create a backlog. What do you have in place to manage that? And of course, there are AI automation tools that you can assist, but at the end of the day, a human still needs to check it, and probably for years to come, because still no one has solved the hallucination problem with artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And it's nowhere in the future right now.
And the sad thing is, and I think this happens more often than not, especially with some of my students who are small businesses, one woman, one man show, they're using the tool. They're encouraged to use the tool. They're afraid they're going to be left behind if they don't. And then, like you said, it's spewing out all this information. And I think, and tell me if you disagree, a lot of people are just like, okay, it's good enough. And they're putting it out there. Like there's
Yeah.
not a lot of work they're doing to it. And I think a lot of stuff I get out of Chat GPT, I would never put out there. And so
Yeah.
I look at it and think that's the most watered down response I've ever seen. And I could never put that into a book or a PDF or whatever, but it's a great place to start. But would you
Yeah.
agree? A lot of people are overwhelmed and they're just, okay, this is what ChatGPT said. I'm posting it.
Well, also because we're seeing Google search, for example, now changing their ranking system to rank Reddit or LinkedIn posts or Instagram, the most recent post, it is forcing us to produce content at a more rapid rate, which you're right, there's a decline in quality.
Yes.
So, and this was why at the very start of last year, I'm like, hold up, guys, do you not understand what
Yes.
is coming next? And, one of the main things they were saying last year is AI won't replace you, someone using it will. First of all, BS.
I've heard that
BS.
so many times.
Because there's an underlying assumption to that statement, which is AI will not be able to do the jobs it itself creates in the future.
Hmm. When you
Do you
say
get
it that
that?
way.
So they're making the assumption that the jobs that AI creates, it won't be able to do in the future. That's
And that is, yeah,
ridiculous.
not true.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And for business owners to be able to take a step back and look at, okay, 3, 5 years down the pipeline, what would the state of my business be? This is the heads up that I wish we all had before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, consumer behavior is changing at a rapid rate. Are we actually up to date with our consumer needs? Because they are using these tools very differently. And I've heard from major companies, major media companies in the past few months, their traffic is taking a major hit. Now, I can guarantee you one part of that is because people are getting their responses direct from AI
Mm-hmm.
and not those website platforms,
Mm.
which means adapting to AI means more than just adopting it. It means taking a step back and looking at, okay, it's changing relationships. It's overwhelming people. Maybe I need to get through to them by posting the mail. Maybe I need to pick up the phone. Because another trend is that the AI automated outreach emails, that's going to start flooding everyone.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of AI gurus making suggestions that is horrible advice that will either get you blacklisted from Google or fired by a client for inadvertently using plagiarism in their work in which they could get sued for.
Yes.
And last year I covered a story. It was called the AI SEO heist. So a marketer decided to use AI to scan a competitor's website, and it was Excel tips, Microsoft Excel.
Yeah.
Scan this other website, then started recreating, I think, about 1,800 articles that had the AI write it. He generated over 3 million website visitors within the space of a couple of months. The other business owner was obviously livid because they'd
Right.
spent decades building this site up. But then, because this marketer decided to blast it out onto social media, what he'd done, Google found out and blacklisted his site, and his traffic went to zero a
Okay.
week later.
How do you feel about that? Do you think that's a good thing that that happened?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, good. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. When I covered that story, that had millions of views because to me, that is a warning to say that some of the advice from the AI gurus is literally out of date next week and will cause you reputational harm.
Yes.
And I've seen that happen so often in the past year. I mean, last year we saw thousands of AI tools come online. One was where you could actually upload a PDF to this platform, and then the plugin was ChatGPT, so ChatGPT could analyze it. This guy had built it up to tens of thousands of subscribers. Of course, ChatGPT released their own feature to analyze a PDF. Following week, he was on Twitter, devastated that his business had just been wiped out. People were unsubscribing in the tens of thousands.
Wow.
Now, this is where we need to deploy critical thinking to go, hey, you know what? ChatGPT is probably going to do this.
Yes.
That's a natural evolution of where they're going. Am I building a business for the moment or a lifetime?
Yes. So true. It's so true. Okay, so Ben, I want you to talk a little bit about your book and who it's for and why you thought it was so important to write. And we kind of touched on that, but I want to end there. But before we do, I would like to end, you're going to laugh at me because this sounds so silly, but I want to end on a positive note
Yeah, no,
because
of
I
course.
I think that we're freaking some people out. My heart's beating a little faster than when we started. And it's so funny because to know you, I know this is going to sound weird, but you are all light to me. Like when I get to
Thank you.
talk to you, you just have such a beautiful personality and so much light. But then you have to talk about this topic that could get really dark. And
Yeah.
so I would like to bring a little hope to people. Remember, we're talking to small business owners. Some are just getting started, some are just leaving their 9 to 5 to get going, and some have been at it for a while. I have a lot of advanced marketers listening as well.
Yep.
What hope can you bring them around this topic that we're talking about? What could allow them to take a little bit of sigh of relief or at least feel hopeful about the future?
I think everything that I've shared, even though it comes with a warning label, is an advantage.
Mm,
Because if I know, for example, people are using AI to kind of scam the Google algorithm system, I'm going to head in the opposite direction. If
yeah.
I know that my competition, like you said, are going to water down their content, I'm going to head in the opposite direction. If I know that they're going to use these tools to flood their social media channels with content that doesn't meet people where they're at, I'm going to head in the opposite direction.
Yes.
So even though it comes with a big warning, these are your signs, the new landmarks to say, okay, we have a new landmark over here that I need to recognize. It's not the end of the world. In fact, there's a great opportunity. When you do the SWOT analysis against artificial intelligence, I guarantee your listeners are going to go, wait a sec. Like, I'm an empath. I can connect with my customers in a way that AI can't. Sure, it can fake it, but it's still not real.
Yep.
When you do that SWOT analysis, you are going to find those opportunities. And I was on a financial podcast a couple of months ago, and they're concerned. Financial advisors are absolutely concerned right now. I said, first of all, just stop and breathe and take a second. You have to understand that your consumers are scared of artificial intelligence being involved in their bank accounts.
Yes.
Like, that is a selling point.
Huge opportunity.
Huge
Yes.
opportunity.
Yes.
So, yeah, I don't mean to scare people, but it's just like times to act is right now. And the hope that I hope to get through the book is to work through these emotions to go, okay, shock, denial, this is a lot to digest, get it. All right, what's the next phase? There might be anger, especially if you look at freelancers getting less work right now. Totally okay. That's part of the normal process. And to get through to hope is that stop listening to those people that you have to adapt or die. I wish that saying would die
Yeah. Same.
already. It's ridiculous because we've seen that consumers, when they speak online, change public policy. It also helps to change the terms of services of some of these companies that I believe are going too far.
For
We saw
sure.
we saw this with Zoom last year when it was announced, or when someone uncovered, I should say, not announced, in the terms of service that they were going to train their AI model on our video calls. There was
I
huge
mean,
public
come on.
backlash. They retracted the change. Other companies have still gone ahead with it, but they haven't had the media coverage that Zoom had at the time. There is still a window of opportunity for people to step up and say, here is the line that shouldn't be crossed. The content that I create as copyright law stands right now is mine. You
Yes.
take it, legal action.
Yes.
And for creators, just like my dad, a farmer, we did everything to protect our crops.
Mm-hmm.
If there were weeds, we had to spray weed killer. Like we
Yep.
had to keep the sheep out. People need to become fiercely protective of the information because that's where you derive your value.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
there is still an amazing opportunity to dictate the policy of these companies. And I think there are good things happening in AI regulation at the moment. And I think a lot of business owners will say, and I had this response all the time last year in my interviews, which is regulation will stifle innovation.
Mm,
Hold up. No. Would you ever go to a psychiatrist that wasn't regulated?
no,
Would you go to a surgeon that wasn't regulated?
absolutely not.
To an accountant?
No,
Or drive a car that wasn't regulated?
no.
No. Regulation legitimizes industries. And when AI is being used in healthcare, finance, or even the content that we produce, when it's regulated, it legitimizes it. It actually makes
Yes.
it better.
I
And
love looking at that way.
there is a lot of regulation coming down the pipeline. There's, I think, maybe Tennessee, I want to say the Elvis Act.
Oh, what is that?
I think this was a couple of months ago. It's all happening pretty fast, but
Okay,
it essentially means that others can't use your likeness and image to create a clone of you.
great.
So there are these things that have been put in place, but we still need people to speak up.
Yes. And thank goodness you are on this earth because you are absolutely speaking up and you're giving us a different perspective. And that's what your book is all about. So, first of all, who should be reading your book and where can people find it? And where
Yep.
can people find out more about you? Because some people are listening and they're like, first of all, we like his sexy voice. And second of all, he's got a lot of good things to say. And so, where can people find out more about you? So, I just asked
Yep.
you a lot, but give me all the info.
Well, if people are wondering, the accent is Australian
It's
because people
Australian.
confuse it with British or South African.
And you know I'm a sucker for an Australian accent, so I could listen to you all day long.
So they can go to thewolfofai.co, thewolfofai.co, and the book's available everywhere right now. But the book, I think there's multiple layers of subtext, and my editor absolutely hated me. Because
I
there are
bet.
parts of the story that speak directly to the subconscious mind. There's a subtext for content creators in there to tell your story, subtext for marketers in terms of, I hope this book provides an example of how to do things differently moving forward, to do it in a different way. But this other subtext is the grieving process. There is a layer of unresolved trauma from the pandemic that then we're suddenly piling on all of this extra change
Mm-hmm.
to work through those emotions. And with the book, I take people on a bit of a journey through New York City where I get stuck in a hurricane and all of everything goes wrong. And we kind of duck back into the Industrial Revolution, what was occurring in Manhattan, to fast forwarding to the future. So I did try and write the book kind of like a Netflix series that you're reading it, you get to a chapter and you're like, wait, what's happening? I don't get it. And then as it unfolds, you're like, oh, I wanted to create psychological payoffs that the reader, instead of just being another boring nonfiction book, I want
Yeah, it's
psychological
very
payoff.
creative how you wrote it. You're a master storyteller. And so that's what I love most about the book as well. So I feel like everybody listening today should be reading this book. Is it on Audible as well?
Yes.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Okay, so a lot of my audience likes Audible. So Audible, you could obviously get it wherever. I'll link to all of it. I'll link to your website in the show notes. And where can they find you on social?
Yeah, YouTube is where I tend to post the most. So just YouTube, Ben Angel, and you'll find me all over
Perfect.
it.
Ben, thank you so very much for this. I've been looking forward to having you on the show. And I just think you've written a really important piece of work that all of us should get our hands on. So thank you again.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you. I'm humbled to be here.
Take care, my friend. So there you have it. But I need to bring up something really important that Ben mentioned in the episode. And I wanted to retouch on it because I know many of you, your ears perked up around this specific topic. Ben talked about a platform, a course platform that had some information in its terms and conditions that essentially were not necessarily advantageous to a course creator. And so, you know that I'm a big fan of membership.io and Kajabi. So, what I did is I reached out to both of them and I said, can you send me a statement around your stance with AI and protecting the course creators' content that are using your platform? Where do you stand? What does that look like for you? How are you protecting your course creators with their content? And both membership.io and Kajabi sent me statements back that I think you need to hear, because if you're creating a course, if you're using either of these platforms, I think it's important to really understand how to navigate these platforms in the world of AI. And so I reached out to both of them. I got statements from both of them, very, very helpful, and I'm putting them in the show notes. So all you need to do is go to amyporterfield.com/AI roadmap. amyporterfield.com/AI roadmap. That will take you to the show notes of this episode, and you can read both of the statements from my two favorite course creator platforms. All right, my friend, I hope you love this episode. Definitely go get Ben's book, The Wolf is at the Door. You will not regret it. And I cannot wait to see you next week for more entrepreneurial goodness. Bye for now.